All right, so I'm going to talk about invisible injuries. So you have your typical injuries where you have a cast on, you have crutches, you have some physicality to bring forth an injury on a certain part of the body, and it's visible. You can see it. Invisible injuries work way different. They are a lot different. So the invisible, and it also coincides with like invisible wounds, and there's also some technicalities that run with that as well. So the invisible injuries, they can come from trauma, so domestic abuse, assault, that sort of thing. Something internal that you can't see is the best way to put it. There are also internal injuries dealing with like the head. If you get kicked and you're like bleeding, internal bleeding and all that stuff, it's invisible until it is seen, until there's like tests and all that sort of thing done. Ironic enough, mental illness is also an invisible wound or an invisible injury as well. There is other like categories to this, so like spinal issues, and there's people who are born with that as like a birth defect, or something happens that results in a defect that is of that sort. So breaking that down, what is an invisible injury for me? Well, on the internal side, like I said, mental health is part of that. So, like, the depression and anxiety is part of that. I went through a lot of trauma in my life. I did go through some domestic abuse and domestic violence and different variables of that sort. So, that's all in relation to this as well. So, how have I been working through that? Well, like I said, people don't assume that you have something going on if they don't see it. So it gets tiresome and it gets honestly kind of frustrating to sit there and verbalize it nonstop. So the best way you can do this proactively and go about this in the sense that it's going to reach volumes and reach the people it needs to reach is by just kind of not keeping it to yourself, but also not making it into a huge deal. You want to make awareness like come about is the best way to do it. So speak, but speak with purpose. Find different numerics, find different awarenesses, find different groupings that are willing to help support your cause or your need or your voice that you're trying to make known. It is a very swept under the rug type thing with the invisible injuries because, like I said, you can't see them. So most people are going to either try and call BS, or they're going to want proof, or this, that, and the other. I can tell you that going through talk therapy, technically that would be submissible as proof for that, because I had a diagnosis on that, and with the different surgeries I've been going through, those actually count on a sense. There are friends of mine that have other certain birth defects or disabilities, and the list goes on. You can actually go and look that up yourself, and the knowledge is power on that. But it is pretty powerful to look at all that and to see that there are different realms of this. So you don't have to have a cast on, you don't have to have crutches, you don't have to have a physical outward scar. Sometimes it is an outward scar because there is corrective surgeries for certain things, but not always. But the scars can be internal, and the wounds can be internal, and honestly it comes down to certain things like PTSD is another thing. So you physically can't see that. You can see the reactionary of it, but you physically cannot see the wound or the injury. So just be mindful of that. And it's definitely one of those things where everyone is fighting a battle that no one knows about. So just, keep that in mind. And that's where we are on that.